and right here, right now. Tuning in to Bills Central Radio.
Time now for Bills Central Radio with ProFootballCentral.com's Chris Brown and BillsMafia.com Del Reid.
Let's go, Buffalo. Let's go, Buffalo. Let's go, Buffalo. Touchdown, rain, sleet, or snow. Let's go, Buffalo. Let's go, Buffalo. Let's go, Buffalo.
And we are back here on Bills Central Radio. My name is Chris Brown, and I'm currently on the line, joined by the co-host of the show, Del Reid. How are we doing today, Del?
What's going on, man? How you doing this fine Monday morning, or I guess afternoon it just became?
Doing fantastic. We got a great show lined up. We have a couple of guests on the show. First guest is going to be a running back, Kendall Gaskins of the Buffalo Bills. We're also going to have former Buffalo Bill. He's a five-time Pro Bowler, defensive lineman. Smerlas is going to be on the show, and then we'll talk a little bit about the Play 60 event over the past weekend and a little bit about minicamp coming up here starting tomorrow. So we are actually joined on the line here by our first guest, Kendall Gaskins. He's a running back for the Buffalo Bills. How are you doing this afternoon, Kendall?
Great. How are you doing?
Oh, doing good. Thank you for asking. Thanks for joining us today.
No problem. No problem.
We'll talk a little bit about your upcoming from Richmond. We'll start off there. Coming out of college, you're especially known as being a prototypical power back, and you had the great stats to back that notion up. Has this critique of your game changed since you've become a Buffalo Bill? Are you still that power back type?
I don't consider myself just a power back. I consider myself an overall back, because even though I'm a bigger body, I still, in the past, I have the ability to run past defenders and also block the ball out the back. So I consider just relate myself as a power, myself as a overall big back, and it's a back that can do things. I also have the ability to block, and if I'm needed to play fullback, which I have the experience of doing before in my career that I.
Okay. Now you had a successful career at Richmond, coming from a smaller school at the collegiate level. Do you feel like you've had an extra chip on your shoulder to have to try to prove to others that you can compete at the next level in the NFL?
Oh, of course, I always started from my All-Star game. I played in during the process. Game. You always see the smaller school guys, especially me, play with the chip on their shoulder to show that the scouts in the bigger school that lack it. After the guys like arguing about teams are better, like say like Tennessee or another team, Florida, but you can't argue that. But you can't argue that conversation. You just have to prove what you can do and get the respect from those guys, and then they'll ultimately respect your college.
Hey, Kendall, this is Del Reid from BillsMafia.com. You talked about proving what you can prove. Now, the running back core for the Bills right now is pretty deep between C.J. Fred, Tashard Choice, Drew Smith out of Albany, and yourself. How are you feeling you're stacking up with those guys, and has the competition been fierce, for lack of a better term, over the past few months with OTAs and everything?
Yes, competition is always going to be high, especially since some new staff and new GMs. So right now, everyone's trying to prove themselves. And, I'm just trying to do the things I can do to what I can control and not worry about what somebody else is doing or not worried about any name dropping or like that. So I feel like if I do the things I can control and do them successfully, then I have a good chance of making this roster.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right there. Now, talking about what you bring to the table, right? Okay, so when you're growing up, everybody's got like a player that they idolize, right? That they watch them play, and maybe it's not always like you're a running back. I don't know if you always were through your career, or if you always idolize, like say somebody like Ray Lewis or somebody who just brings so much fire to the field. Who did you look up to when you were growing up in terms of professional sports?
Two sports. Actually, I idolize three people in two different sports. the first two for football was Terrell Davis and Brian Dawkins. Terrell Davis, he's similar to me. Well, he was like a low-round draft pick, but even though I wasn't drafted, but he had to work his way up to get to where he was and be a successful football player. And I feel like I always admire that. And I was just in the Broncos heyday, and I was really into just Terrell Davis because he brought so much passion to the game. And the same reason for Brian Dawkins, he brought a lot of passion to the game. Growing up, I was an Eagles fan, and he just played his heart out, and he was just one of the best players at safety to ever play the game. And for basketball, like I grew up next to Philly, so I'm a Philly fan. So Allen Iverson, he was so small and passionate, and so I just liked his toughness. So between those three guys, I just really try to mold my game after them and just be tough and passionate about what I do. I think I've done a good job with that so far throughout my career.
Yeah, that's awesome. I always love that story about Terrell Davis, how he would, in the Super Bowl, when he had a migraine, he said he couldn't see. He ended up running for a touchdown anyways.
Yeah.
Man, what gamer.
Crazy.
Absolutely, yeah. All right, so I'm a big Bills fan, right? And I'm also a full-time dad. So okay. I had the opportunity to bring my kids to the Play 60 event at Ralph Wilson Stadium this past weekend. And I saw you out there. I think you were doing a lot of stuff with Keith Pugh, who I think my kids fell in love with. What was that like, man? First of all, thank you as a dad, as a Bills fan. Thank you for taking the time to do that and to mix it up with the kids. I think that was really great. It's something I know my kids are going to remember forever. Heck, I'm going to remember it forever. But thank you for that. But so what was that like? Did you have fun? What was your favorite part? Just talk about that whole event if you can.
Well, I'm big into social interactions, which is why I majored in sociology in college. So doing stuff like that, just interacting with the people and kids and just seeing the looks on their faces when they get a chance to interact with the players of our status because we're in the NFL. It's just mind-boggling to see how much we can make someone's day. And not only the kids, as you said, the parents as well. So just doing that for an hour and a half, I could have went longer. I could have went longer. I could have went all day. I was having a blast out there, running around, jumping around. So it was just a great time overall, and I want to do it every other time they have Play 60.
Yeah, it was definitely cool. Like I said, thanks for that. Like the parent, I know I can speak for myself. I had a blast doing it. I wish I could rewind and do the whole weekend all over again. It was too cool. It was too cool.
Sure.
All right, now we'll talk about. We'll continue with the off field a little bit. The running back core. You had mentioned Freddie, and he's been on Twitter a lot lately with the NBA Finals going on. Is communicating with a couple of the teammates, publicly announcing who they want to win the NBA Finals and everything, with Freddie wanting the Spurs and then a bunch of people wanting the Heat and everything to win. There's been a few bets that have been going around. The wager is based on push-ups, and it looks like a lot of the teammates there are going against Freddie and going with the Heat. So if the Heat end up losing, Freddie's going to be owed a lot of push-ups. Have you gotten in on the bet at all?
I haven't gotten into the bets, but I have been getting in on the tweets. Last night, a bunch of the guys were at his house watching the game, and everyone was getting on him when the game started, getting out of him. So it's getting really funny and interesting to see all that taking place. You just see tweets left and right going to Freddie, so it's pretty cool. I'm not sure if I'm going to get into bets, but I'm pretty confident he will win, so I don't have to worry about that.
Well, yeah, they definitely went on that pretty outstanding run last night, that 33-5 run there on the court. So it's pretty cool to see, you as the NFL players and teammates interacting and doing push-ups as a wager. I think that's pretty neat. Now, for the Bills fans that are listening, would you mind telling us something that they may not know about you, whether it's on the field or off the field personally?
Well, I'm not, before the games, I'm not a traditional guy that to listen to all that pump-up music before. I actually like to listen to really mellow music because I don't want to psych myself out, because I tried to listen to the hype music before, and all it does is just get me just too excited and actually not focused. So rather than listen to all that high music, I listen to kind of mellow and relaxed music to just get me in my own zone so I can focus right off the start of the game. So I feel like that's pretty interesting because you usually hear a lot of people talking about just listen to great pump-up songs and stuff like that. I'm not really a guy to do that. I just kind of get in my own zone so I can focus and stay focused.
Okay. Now, what would you say is your go-to song?
I'll probably say "Successful" by Drake and Trey Songz. It's a song just talking about success, and it's just really mellow and low key. So I feel like I just get to listen to the words. It's a nice calm beat, so I just listen to the words very closely and just get my thoughts together and go over some of the last minute game plan, something like that. So
awesome. All right. Well, we got one more question for you before we let you go.
Okay.
What has been your best experience about being a Buffalo Bill so far?
It definitely is probably going to have to be that play 60. Also, just the older guys. Our team is very young, so we don't have like that many like older guys on the team. But the older guys on the team and some of the guys that have been in the league 3 or 4 years, which will be considered vets on our team, just taking guys under their wing and always are just there to help you in practice and stuff like that. Because you hear a lot of stories about some of the older guys not even talking to rookies, but that's not the deal here with the Bills. Everyone interacts on the team, and it's just a great team bonding. That's what I like. You hear one of my teammates told me in college that you want to get to know all your teammates in college because when you get to the next level, it's not going to be like that. And so far, he's proved that wrong because the guys here are really open and we always do stuff together. So that's one thing I really enjoyed the most.
Awesome. That's fantastic. That's good to see that the tradition of a so to speak brotherhood is within the Bills locker room. That's fantastic. Well, we'd like to thank you for joining us today on Bills Central Radio. Kendall, we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to speak with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, man. Best of luck going forward into mini camp and preseason and training camp and all that jazz. Wishing you nothing but the best, man.
Appreciate that. Have a good day.
And coming up right after the break, we're going to have the next guest on our show. We're going to have 5-time Pro Bowler of the Buffalo Bills. Fred Smerlas will join us on the line coming up right after the break.
This is Kevin Elliott, wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills, and you are listening to Bills Central Radio. Go Bills.
Back here on Bills Central Radio, we have our second guest on the line for today's show. He is a former 5-time Pro Bowl defensive lineman for the Buffalo Bills, Fred Smerlas. How are you doing today, Fred?
Guys, I'm hanging in there. I'm down here in Boston waiting for it to rain, and just got to see Kelly and the boys up at his golf tournament last weekend. And a couple weeks prior, I went down to see my big fat black friend Benny Williams down in Jackson, Mississippi. So we're making the alumni tour.
Oh, fantastic. Definitely sounds good. We'll go ahead and we'll start asking a couple of questions here. We first wanted to start off the show by asking you about Deacon Jones. Being that you were a defensive player during your time for the Bills, was he somebody that you watched growing up, and did you try to emulate his style of play on the field?
No, we were quite different. He was, I was a quick inside tackle. He was a faster outside attack defensive end. But, when we were playing, Chuck Knox played with the Rams, coached the Rams. You remember Ground Chuck? He coached the Bills for a number of years. But he brought a bunch of players over from the Rams, and they also brought tapes over, of Merlin Olsen and Deacon Jones and Rosie Greer. And we would watch individual pass rush moves, what they made. We'd watch their how they took on blockers and shed them. So I got to see him a lot. And when I first got in the league, I was an attack defensive end in college, and they moved me inside the nose tackle, which I had never played before. So in order to find out how to play, I had to watch everybody. I watched every single person that played, watch nose tackles for technique on how to play nose and two-gap, watch outside guys to watch how to speed if I was shifted out there. So I used to sit there on the days off with Hazlitt, because Hazlitt was a film junkie, and watch everybody. And Merlin, Deacon was like Bruce Smith. He was like a mean Bruce Smith. I mean, he was a nasty, mean, trash-talking tough guy. Bruce was, a freak of nature, a great pass rusher. But Deacon, if you counted sacks, we talked about my buddy Fat Benny Williams. They didn't count sacks to 82, and Deacon was he probably had over 200 sacks. The guy was a machine. So but everyone knew Deacon Jones from his demeanor, his colorful personality, and his phenomenal pass rushing and football ability.
Absolutely, and you had mentioned when we introduced you into the show, you talked about Jim Kelly with the announcement of his cancer and his successful surgery that just took place last week. Have you had a chance to speak with him and his family and see how he's doing and everything?
I hadn't talked to him since. I had prostate cancer. I had 100 different operations and several different things. And usually, right when you get out, everyone's talking to you. The press is talking to you. You want to be kind of close to your family. You want to be left alone. I heard a few of my buddies said that he is doing well. It's Kelly. Kelly's as tough as it nails. My wife said to me, I didn't know he had screws put in his back and all this stuff done. He doesn't complain. He wasn't even complaining when he announced he had cancer. We found out earlier the day before, and his cousins, his brothers told us, and he came up to us and pulled his teeth out. He had a fake bridge or something in front of his, pulled it out, and he was pretending he was Jack Lambert. This is a guy that has mouth cancer, is going for surgery on Monday, and he's goofing about it. And the guy doesn't, he's just a leader in everything he does, for the charity, for football, for his family, for his friends. So Kel's a tough guy, and one of the toughest guys I ever played with, and thank God he's doing good.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank God he's doing good. Hey, this is Del Reid. I wanted to ask you, if we switch over to the on the field stuff a little bit here with you and I had some interactions back in December on Twitter and everything about the state of the Bills, and you were pretty vocal on what you thought needed to change, and you had some specific suggestions as well in terms of coaching candidates and stuff. Well, the Bills made their change. They've got a new administration in place, actually from GM, down to every single position coach. Do you like the direction they're heading in now, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's one thing that didn't change, right? There's a couple of the top guys. It will remain to be seen whether they give Maroney the latitude he needs to implement the type of team he wants. Now they get a new GM. If I'm taking that job, and I think Maroney had several offers, I talked to some inside people that said there was a bunch of teams after him. So it wasn't a guy that was a castaway or a guy that was the last stop or a guy trying to make his name using this as a stepping stone, the Buffalo Bills team. And so I think they got a guy with the strong personality. He had some leverage when he signed with Buffalo. Plus, he absolutely wanted to be here. So I started watching some of his his speeches he made and some of his interviews, and I liked the guy. I met him up at the at Kelly's event. I think they finally got a good coach. And you guys know today's day and age, it isn't the defense. The NFL took away most of the tools the defense needed to intimidate guys or to knock receivers out or knock backs out. You can't do that stuff. So offense is more dominant now than it's ever been before. So you need a coach that can adapt to things, a coach that can bring players in and make them and make your scheme work with them and not just them working a scheme that's not quite right for them. So I like that aspect of it. And also the quarterback. Teams now are coach and a quarterback. You look at every team that's got a good coach or a great coach, a good quarterback or a great quarterback, they're winning all the time. Sometimes the older coaches don't get it or the older owners don't get it. Leagues change dramatically. And I think the Bills got a very good coach, and the quarterback is interesting. Because I met with Ponda's father, Christian Ponda, and his son played with Manuel down in Florida. And the rap about him was he didn't have great accuracy and didn't read defense as well. But the more you read into this kid, as far as character, teamwork together, great athlete. guys rally around a strong quarterback, and that's your core. You need a good guy. You can't have a bad guy being quarterback or your team's going to crumble. I think nothing against Fitzpatrick or those guys. I don't think they were strong leaders. This guy, I really like the character. From what I read on him and what I've seen of him talking and what other people have said about him, I love his character. I think that team's going to grow around a new coach with strength. Quarterback with character, got some speed, you have good backs, your line's not bad. So I like the direction to go right now. It's been when they brought Chan Gailey and I fell off my chair. I'm like, what? Chan Gailey? I felt like I just going down a roller coaster. Holy man! Were you guys excited when they brought Chan Gailey in? I think
not excited. No.
No, I think it was
not with some of the names that were
August.
expressing interest.
The what?
Not with some of the names that were expressing interest. Like.
Well, players didn't want to go there. They didn't want to go to the Raiders, and they didn't want to go to Buffalo. And you got a guy, Maroney, that had other offers. So, as long as they give the coach the room to move, GM works with the coach, and the coach has a lot to say. He knows best what his player and what kind of players he wants, and that's why Belichick is so successful, and all the successful coaches, Coughlin around the league. They get say who they keep, who they discipline, who they get rid of. And the players know that. So he has juice on the field.
Oh, absolutely. And you talked about being able to sign free agents and bring in players. And Coach Marone brought in the new defensive coordinator now, and Coach Mike Pettin. How do you believe the signings of defensive tackle Alan Branch and the linebacker Emmanuel Lawson will help to improve the defense under new Coach Pettin's defensive hybrid scheme? And do you see them, improving and becoming a potential top 10 defense for this year?
Well, where were the Bills in scoring last year? 29th or something? I mean, I think that your catalyst is offense when they're moving the ball. And the Patriots didn't have great defenses down here, but they had the firepower and they kept in games. I think they have decent potential on defense. I think you need a coach, like I said before, that can adapt to his talent. So you can't make everybody adapt to a certain scheme because they just don't. A lot of the good athletes haven't played that scheme. So when you could be creative on defense, Ryan for the Jets for years would have different fronts, different coverages, right? They'd have different personnel on the field all the time. Patriots would bring in guys like Vrabel. Who's Vrabel? All of a sudden he's a Pro Bowl player. Bruschi, he's a defensive end. Now he's a linebacker. You see guys, you have a formula that you like, you bring them in, and you get creative. You make a scheme that fits your guys, right? And I think with the Buffalo Bills, too many times they're trying to fit guys into a scheme instead of a scheme to the guys they have. And that will be the big, if that happens, there'll be a revelation on defense. But the offense is big. You got to get the ball moving. Be creative on defense. Confuse people. If you come out in a straight 3-4 or 4-3 or you're running base stone all the time, they're going to kill you. So deception a little bit and creativity makes your defense.
Now, comparing, things with last year, granted, we haven't seen the new defense and the schemes and everything coming in this year. From what it sounds like, you don't think we'll be sitting back in a soft, vanilla defense zone coverage. We'll be blitzing the quarterback and showing different fronts on different occasions. Wouldn't you believe so?
Well, watching the Patriots and watching Buffalo, I've watched tons of football. A lot of teams are sitting in cover too. They make you. They'll take away a little bit of what you like, and they'll make you go the long field to hope you make a mistake. If you rush the passer, if you got to bring blitzes on the passer all the time, and they catch you in it, a big play's going to happen. Now, if Mario Williams plays up to his potential, shoot, look at teams when we had Bruce. We'd be in a four-man front, and they couldn't stop it. Because you have to double up Bruce or Arthur or myself and Bennett, and you could bring the heat. They have some good individuals that can pass rush. But being a scheme on defense doesn't necessarily mean rushing the passer. It's confusing the passer. Different looks, coverages change. When a guy's going down the seam, the tight end, bait him to go in, have off safety come back and cut up in front of them. So you do a lot of different things to bait people into doing something that they love to do, but you're waiting for it. So the subtle things you don't see with the changes of coverage, mess teams up a lot of times, gets them out of what they like to do, and they start that's when it starts to falter.
Absolutely. Now, you had some off the field endeavors. You had written a book called By a Nose. Would you be willing to talk about it a little bit for those who haven't had a chance to read it, what it's about, and where the embrace and where it all started from?
About what it's about? By a Nose?
Yeah.
By a Nose was, one of the most overlooked position on the field was a nose tackle. When you're two-gapping as a nose tackle, you're playing both sides of the center, hence the name two-gap, right? So if I'm playing two-gap and they're trying to run to my left, I have to control the center to the side of the play, make the backside guy, front side guy bump me in order to get movement, and that gives the linebacker the ability to make the tackle, so they become hero. So when I have a different perspective on things when I'm getting my face pounded in by three guys, and if they're hitting me, the linebackers are free. So my view of things is totally different. The quarterback, you're right up, the guy in front of you, if he has bad breath, breathing on you, right? You can see the hair, the pores in his hand, and it's an intense position. So, my outlook on things, talking trash, or I remember playing against Rick Saul from the Rams. He looks up at me and goes, "Hey, hi, Fred, how you doing?" And I was about to say, "Good," and he snapped the ball. I'm like, "Damn." So the next play he goes on and goes, "Oh, I'm sorry." I said, "No problem," snaps the ball again. So the stuff you see, think about it. I'm an inch and a half away from a guy's face and right into his eyes. So it's a view from the pit of hell, right in the middle of the line, talking about different players in the league, talking about the coaches, talking about how a nose tackle plays, what quarterbacks were like, some of the players on the team, just an outlook from a position that has been too often overlooked.
That's awesome. I like that perspective. Hey, Fred, how are you? Snaps the ball. It's funny. Now you wrote that with. What's that?
Have you guys read it?
I read it back in high school. I think it came out I think in the early '90s or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I read it back in high school. For Christmas, my parents would get me a bunch of books, and like one of them was what was the name of it by Vic Carucci? The Almost Dream Season, and then they got me that one, and it's a good read.
Remember Conrad's the dirty? They call me Dirty.
Yeah, I have a signed pennant at home with a Bills helmet on it, and it's got Conrad Dobler's signature on it. Conrad
was a classic. Everything they said about Conrad was true. He was nasty, mean, vicious. He was the greatest. He was a guy that created diversion by sticking his thumb in your throat with its tape when they had a tongue depressor taped to it, or had aluminum shin guards in the back of his ankles and calves, and it'd spin kick you in the balls and the solar plexus and the throat. He was just vicious. Anyway.
Man, that's too. That's crazy.
The world really got funniest though, because everything was so different back then. We took a 2,400-mile bike ride, motorcycle ride from Boston. I went to Boston to Charlotte, and I met Jimmy Richer there. We drove to Charlotte, and we went to Richmond where he lives. Raleigh. Then we came back. We were doing the mountains up there. Went up to Tennessee, and West Virginia, Pennsylvania. Went out to see Vic Carucci. But then on the way to Buffalo from Cleveland, where Carucci lived now, we went to Fredonia. Remember Fredonia?
Yeah. I saw some of the pictures you were tweeting. That was great.
So we walk in the locker room. It happens to be the athletic director there, and my good buddy Sean McNanny. We took a picture of his locker. We stayed for 8 weeks at doubles. Remember the brain cell, Hank Bullock, the dumbest human being ever to coach any team in the history of the world? He was our coach. When you have a coach with one brain cell, and he has, really life or death in his hand for us guys, and you practiced 8 weeks, and I took a picture of Sean's locker, and I sent it to him, and he texted me back. He goes, "I'm laying in a puddle of blood, murmuring to myself," because I remember those days. Every practice, before practice, Sean would take a bottle of 12, a leave, and shoot it down.
Oh my gosh!
Doubles, your fingers were all screwed up, your ankles, everything hurts. So it was, and I like Fredonia. And think about this, guys. Buffalo hasn't won since I left Fredonia.
Yeah, we are all too familiar with that.
Oh, yeah, we're off it. The Mafia is very familiar with that.
Yep, absolutely. I remember, you were saying last week that there's probably less distractions in Fredonia than there is maybe at St. John Fisher.
Well, everything's become, you have to market the product. That's why they go up to Canada, right? People had asked me about that. I said, I'd rather have 6 games at home than none. So I know they make a lot of money up in Canada, but I went to Rochester a couple of times, and when they come off, everyone's all crowded around with a kid, because you're going to get an hour's rest. You got to eat, then maybe lay down for an hour or two, and get back on the field. So every minute counts, and we really don't have any private time to yourself. That can weigh it down. Everything was gated off, so once we got out of the locker room, went up to the dining hall, we're free from stuff, and then you can go to the meeting rooms after with no people around. But that's draining. I don't know how much effects it has on them. I know, the league has got much more market concerts, but there's something that's not right up there. Whatever it is, it ain't working in our favor.
Oh, man, I hope whatever it is just disappears, because I don't think they're leaving St. John Fisher anytime soon, so hopefully they can overcome that.
I don't think leaving there. I think just tweaking what's there. Like maybe, have 2 days a week where they expose all the people, and a couple days a week where they can just get out of there quietly and have some time of their own. I think that's important. I don't think you need to leave. I don't think it's a place. I think it's just the way it's run right now, because they have to market the team. They got to sell tickets. But the best way to do that is get back in the playoffs.
Yeah, without a doubt. Speaking of marketing the team, they have said that over the past 10 plus years since they've been at St. John Fisher, that Rochester sales have gone up. Or Rochester-based season ticket sales have gone up since then. But if it's something as simple as just having to change the way they run it, well, then I hope that they give that thought,
Yeah, you forget sometimes, because these guys are so big and strong, and you look at them as like Herculean people. But a lot of them are 23, 4 years old. It's still young. And, everyone needs a little downtime. But better players will help, better coaches will help also.
Yeah. Now, I've mentioned to you a couple times over the past several months that, I have actually, it's funny, I have some kind of connection with you on both sides of my family. I have a cousin who I discovered a few months ago has a little Fred Smerlas shrine in her den. I think I sent you a picture of that, like 3 different pictures. That was hilarious. And then my father-in-law, he used to be the chef with his father for the team, Tom Gala, and every holiday, or we always hear stories about Fred Smerlas and Jim Richer and Jim Haslett and all the bench presses you guys could do and all that stuff. It's great, but it's not just my little connection. We saw last week on Twitter somebody tweeted that her grandmother had always had a crush on you and thought you were dreamy or whatever it was. Are you aware of how much? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, we are getting old. I remember all the chefs. Were they working at Fredonia or were they working at the stadium? I remember the name.
Yeah, they were at the stadium.
Yeah, we used to have that big buffet for lunch, and then the food was fabulous. And me being of the Greek descent, love food. Greeks have more taste buds per square inch of their tongue than any other group in the world. You know that?
No, I did not know that.
Well, I just made it up, but it sounded good. But they were very accommodating, and then they're right about they forget that they come in now with the bench press test and all this other stuff, and they forget guys like Jimmy and myself. Jim Richer benched 600 pounds plus.
I am very aware of that. We were there the day that Jim Richer set the record of bench presses in the locker room. I hear that all the time. That's great.
No, I set the record. I had 51 reps for 225.
Oh, is that what it was?
And I did.
I'll make sure I mention that.
Richter could bench more than I, but up to like 450, I could probably do more reps. I did 38 reps at 275, and he only did 35. But he would do sets of 5 with 520. Here's a funny story. Richter came, not funny, but kind of freaky. Jimmy wasn't that big, but he was like, if you hit him, it was like hitting a piece of wood. So one day after practice, we all come in. It was a long day of hitting. It was our lifting day, so I still had my pad pants on, cleats. I'm just going to get it over because I'm tired. So I got down the bench. So I went up to 485, and I really tired. I barely got it. I was a little over 500. Jimmy comes in with his cleats on and pads and warms up with 485. And then he goes up to 505, 550 for 2, right? 580 for 1, and just couldn't lock out 600 after practice. So the whole team is just circling around him going, and I go, Jim, you keep doing that. The zoo's going to come and take you away. Going to think you're really covered with hair, and you're that strong. And Joe DeLaMalia says that Joe is a football aficionado. He said, Jim Richer is as good as any guard I've ever seen play, and he's probably better than me, and I'm in the Hall of Fame. And that's a pretty good compliment.
Wow, that is a pretty good compliment.
Hell yeah, from Joe. He's like Uncle Joe now. He takes care of all the old players.
It's funny. That's funny. It's too bad Gene Upshaw has passed on. I really enjoyed a lot of the banter they had back and forth in the media.
Gene Upshaw?
Yeah. Joe DeLaMalia and Gene Upshaw.
It wasn't good banter. Joe, that guy was probably the greatest crook of all time. He looks Madoff. He makes Madoff look like a second-tier citizen. This guy was like, and these are his brothers. We played that. Anyway, remember the time he said I'd snap his neck? He said that about Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember that.
And now Joe, for a little background, Joe had 10 brothers and sisters, and his father ran a little bar right across the street from an auto workers plant in Detroit. And Joe and his brothers, the brothers and sisters, they live in a 3-bedroom apartment above the bar. And they would fight. They'd throw nickels for Joe to fight. Joe was a tough guy. He was always goofing and funny, but that man was tough. And what Upshaw did to all the players by signing some of those crappy CBA deals he signed it, and by, what did he make, $20 million this last year? $20 million. Guys are out there that can't even, get health insurance and having all kinds of problems. Our fearless leader is living a life of luxury, so he's not too popular amongst the old players.
No, I can see that.
I did right.
You guys were talking about the topic of food.
Since
we're getting into the summer, since we're getting into the summertime, that normally means like grill, hot dogs, hamburgers, all that jazz. But the big stuff is steak. We understand that you have your own steakhouse. Is that true? And where is it about?
Now that you bring that up, it's in Lincoln, Rhode Island. It's Twin River Casino. It's Fred and Steve's Steakhouse. And let me tell you, I guarantee anyone that goes down there, a lot of people from Rochester go down because we do the Rochester show out of with Bob Matthews, who I've been doing it with for 27 years, Bob and I. We have a bone-in ribeye, aged premium cut steak that is so good, you'll bring the bone home to lick it at night. I'm telling you, outstanding. We went the other night, with a friend, and we had they have a seafood extravaganza. It's a huge plate with giant Alaskan king crab legs, huge, the thighs, all around, and then inside it is all jumbo giant shrimp with oysters and little necks. And I'm telling you guys, you got to come down sometime. Take a picture of this. You know what? I'll take a picture of it and put it on Twitter. You'll sit there and go, what the? So the food is outstanding. And after you eat, we have a cigar bar, Fred and Steve's, and we also have our own Rocky Patel Fred and Steve cigar. I'll have to send you a couple. Because Thurman, I picked Thurman up on Twitter, sent me a box of his outstanding cigars, so I want him to compare it to Fred and Steve's to see what he thinks.
Oh, there you go, for sure. Yeah, definitely. If you want to tweet out a picture of the location and everything, we'll send it out so people can recognize it once they go down in that area, for sure.
I shall send it out.
Good. All right, well, we got one more question for you. We'll take it to the football field for your last question here. Being in the Boston area, you know about all the Patriots and the dominance over the Bills in the last few years or so. Do you think that the Bills can turn it around and get out of their losing ways with the Patriots, with this new coaching staff and this new field, the new vibe that's going around, the new optimism that's going around at Ralph Wilson?
You know what? I thought there was always a lot of optimism, for the team before the season. We have John the Optimist on our show, and the Buffalo Bills fans, they love their football. When football's over in Buffalo, it just really starts because people are looking at the stats, who we're going to bring in. Down here, you have the Celtics, and you also have baseball, so there's some other distractions. But teams like Buffalo and Cleveland that were just blood and guts football, Green Bay, it's in your culture. And so I think for the first time in a while, because I remember the Dick Gerons and the Williams and then the Changelis, what are you doing? I think this legitimate, and it's real optimism this year because you got a quarterback. Now, Fitzpatrick was a good backup. I said that when they signed him. Not a great quarterback. They brought in, remember Johnson? Johnson was like,
Rob Johnson.
Yeah, pretty guy that didn't want to have bad stats, so he ate the ball 1 million times. And he thought he had a good game. Then they brought in Drew, and you'd have to figure, maybe the smartest man I ever met, not going to trade a player on his team that will hurt his team to a team in the division, right? So that optimism was shattered after they went 8-8 and then kind of fell apart. This time, you got a young guy coming up, quarterback, that has a lot of character. It's his first NFL team. He's going to love playing up there with the fans. A young coach that loves the area, wanted to be there. He's creative when he was down in New Orleans, right? The guy knew how to play football, knew how to light it up. So I think the optimism this year is going to be, they're going to be rewarded because the team's going to play better. I don't know if at this particular juncture to be able to overcome the Patriots if they're healthy, but it's going to be a war. Mm-hmm. They're going to beat up on the Jets. Miami is projected to be real good, but you don't know how these players how good they're going to be. So I think the Buffalo Bills are going to give some people a run for their money. I don't know if it's going to be the year they're going to beat the Patriots twice. They may beat them once, but they're going to give everyone a tough time. It's going to be an exciting season. You're going to see a young quarterback grow before your very eyes. You're going to see coaches come in that just don't run plays that everyone else knows prior to the ball being snapped. Some deception, some aggressiveness. I see the Bills being exciting this year. Really do. For the first time in a while, I have optimism about it.
Good. Well, EJ kind of has Bills ties, family-wise anyway, being that he's Bruce Smith's godson, so that kind of helps in our favor, right?
Well, as long as he doesn't eat chicken wings while he's driving. Yeah, but you look at a guy. So many guys. Remember, a perfect example, a poster boy for talent, being a jerk is Ryan Leaf, right? He came in and everyone was, this guy's talented. Who should we take, right? It was between him and Manning, and he was just such a moron. Jeff George, another kid. So character means a lot. When coaches have a formula of I'm going to pick a guy, and he has to have brains, and he has to have character, even though some of the guys they pick, you're like, what are they doing? Like Patriots pick up what's the name? The guard for I can't have brain loss. They pick up the offensive guard. What's his name? The left guard. Just had a brain loss. But anyway, they picked him out of Fresno State, and he came. He was supposed to be second or third, and they picked him in the first round. Turns out to be the best guy in football because character matters and brains matter, right? So I think the Bills are going to get a coach that they're going to develop a nucleus with players he wants that have his mindset, and that's why the team will develop from the inside out. Absolutely.
Well, we'd like to thank you for taking the time today to talk a little bit about the Bills and the upcoming season and your thoughts, and hopefully we'll have you on the show coming when the season's about to start and maybe get a little bit more optimism here going on once the season gets a little closer. I know it's only June and mini camp's starting tomorrow, but training camp starts in July, and we'd like to definitely have you on the show again. Thanks for taking the time today, Fred. We appreciate it.
All right, my friends. Good luck.
What's up? This is Arthur Moats, number 52 of the Buffalo Bills, and you're listening to Bills Central Podcast on Pro Football Central. Go Bills.
We are back here on Bills Central Radio. Just had our previous guest on the show. We had Kendall Gaskins as well as former Pro Bowl Buffalo Bill, Fred Smerlas, on the show. Hit on some great topics with the Bills' upcoming schedule. Kendall sounded optimistic about the upcoming season and his battles going in the running back position. What were your thoughts, Bill?
Yeah, it was cool. I'm glad we got that audio issue fixed early on. Anyways, it was a really good conversation. I thought that it was interesting to hear what he had to say about the Kids Day event, and that he enjoyed it, and that was his favorite thing of being a Bill so far. I thought that was pretty cool. But overall, I mean, in terms of what he brings to the table as a player, I thought it was pretty cool how he didn't take issue with the idea of being a power back, but really wants to have a full game that he's able to assist the team with. So I thought that was good. What did you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the power back thing basically came out of college, and I can see from a player's perspective. You want to be well rounded. You want to be known as a overall running back, or whatever position you're at. You want to be an overall player. You don't want to specifically be just maybe a power guy. You want to do as much as you can, as much as possible to help the team. So I think, Kendall's in the right direction, and, we wish him the best here with the minicamp coming up here starting tomorrow, and then training camp, and then potentially into the season. But I thought it was great. And then we had another great guest, Fred Smerlas. He had some great insight to what was going on there during his playing days, and what he thought about Coach Marone and where the Bills are going. And he said that he actually was starting to get a little bit of optimism coming for this upcoming season. That he says maybe has been down a little bit in years past. So I thought that was pretty fun.
Yeah, he has a lot to offer in terms of opinions. I mean, we talked about a whole spectrum of issues with Fred, and I really enjoyed talking to him. It was like he was, it sounds weird saying it, but he's like a normal person, right? I mean, he had his opinions, and he was just off the cuff, and it was really cool. And I loved what he had to say about Gene Upshaw when I asked him, or when I mentioned how I used to enjoy the altercations that Gene and Joe DeLamielleure would have in the media. He certainly did not have any punches pulled when he was there to deliver some opinions on the late Gene Upshaw. But I think that was great. There was no filter. He was open. He was honest. It was really a really good interview. I also liked when he was talking about his book, or when he was talking about being a nose tackle in general, and how the center would keep talking to him, and in the middle of a conversation would just snap the ball on him. I thought that was pretty funny. But I don't know, what did you get out of that interview? What did you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Fred, being a Bills guy for a long time, he's witnessed the good days, and he's also seen the bad days, and he touched on a few, coaching issues, and the Bills kind of not having a, so to speak, franchise quarterback to get them back to those winning ways, and he kind of added some insight where he thought E.J. Manuel, had some great qualities, specifically in the leadership aspect, that could potentially help propel the Bills into having another great quarterback on their hands, hopefully hitting with their first pick. But I thought it was great, and I don't know about you, but all that food talk got me wanting lunch pretty good. I could see a hearty steak on my plate right about now.
Yeah, Fred loves his food, huh?
Well, yeah, definitely. We'll have to get, as soon as we get that picture out, we'll get it to everybody. So if they get down in the Rhode Island area, they'll be able to check out the steakhouse down there. But Kendall had talked about the Play 60 event, and when you were talking to him, you had mentioned that you were actually at the event this past weekend. Why don't you go ahead and touch on how your experience was? I know from the pictures that I saw and everything, it looked like you and your daughters were having a fantastic time there, even though maybe the weather was a little disappointing rain-wise, but looked like you guys had a great time and had some great experiences.
Oh, yeah, you know it. Like I told Kendall, I wish I could hit the rewind button and relive this past weekend. It was so cool on Saturday, having the opportunity to take my two daughters down to the field and really have a time that was all about them. I've brought them to the kids' day game they have annually in the preseason. I've taken them to training camp. But for, those two things, it's a lot of sitting. And when you've got kids who are both under the age of 10, it can get kind of dull. So for them to actually experience, Dad's passion, football and everything, in a way that really, spoke to them in terms of the different activities they had set up around the field. And for those of you who aren't aware of this, the Bills had they call it a Play 60 event, and they had something like 29 different players all participating in this event with the kids, and they had stations set up all around the field with the players would throw them footballs or run them through tackling drills, or the kids had the opportunity to try and kick a field goal. It was really cool, and they had autograph sessions set up and everything. It was a lot of fun, and the kids got a tour of the locker room, and it was all about them. And I loved that in the autograph stations, the people maintaining it were very clear that this was not for parents to get autographs, that the kids, it was for them and everything. It was awesome. So yeah, it was great. You mentioned the rain. Rain wasn't that bad. It was a little. It was drizzling for a good portion of it, but the kids are running around acting crazy. If anything, it helped cool them off. So that wasn't that big of a deal. But it was just great. It was great. And for those of you that follow me on Twitter, you probably saw, or on Instagram, you probably saw a bunch of pictures that I was putting out there during the event and afterwards. My kids fell in love with Keith Pugh. They think he is the coolest guy that they've ever met, next to me, of course. In the tackling drill, he was, they would run past him with a football, and he would chase after them and everything, and it was great. I had some, great photos of one of my daughters with Keith, and he's towering over her like this big intimidation thing, and she's just laughing. And then also Drew Smith, who's been on our show before, he ran the kids through a running back drill through the nets and everything, and I got a great photo of him and everything with my other daughter. It was great. I could gush and go on and on forever and ever, but it was something that I wish I had taken them to in the past, but I'm glad that we were able to make it out this year, and Lord willing, the Reids will be there, every year until my kids become too cool for me. So it was a lot of fun.
Well, it definitely sounds like you guys had a great time, and fans sometimes lose perspective. Everybody watches them perform and play on Sundays in the fall, but they forget what they do in the off season. And some of these athletes taking, their time out of their day to spend a little extra time with the kids and the families and the communities, and holding a Play 60 event, not only does it help to promote kids being active and playing for 60 minutes a day, but it also allows them to, show their respect and appreciation for the younger kids and everybody in the community, for helping them out as well. And some athletes have come out and said, in the past that they didn't get these things when they were younger, and it's nice to be able to, so to speak, give back and, just show their appreciation once more. So it's pretty cool. And for those who haven't attended something like that, I would say, it's definitely worth attending just for the experience. And from what you said about you and your daughters and, what you guys did there, it's definitely something that you guys will never forget and that you cherish for your lifetime, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It is one of those memories that, 20, 30 years from now, we'll remember. It was great.
Now we got something coming up starting tomorrow, mini camp. It's the last little bit of football for Bills fans leading up to training camp, which starts late July this year. Mini camp lasting a couple of days. It's mandatory mini camp. All players, mandatory to attend. There's a suspect out there that some guy named Jareth Bird will be not in attendance at mini camp with the contract issues going on there. But what are your thoughts on the upcoming mini camp coming up with the Bills and how they've installed their new system? So basically, it'll be kind of all hands on deck and full board go, and for all of them to show the coaches what they got leading up to training camp.
Yeah, it's exciting. It was a quick 10 or 12 days or whatever it was since the last OTAs finished up, and now here we are, and mini camp's starting up, and like you said, they've installed the plays for the most part, and they're ready to go and begin the final step before training camp kicks off at the end of next month. So you mentioned Jairus Byrd. Based on what I saw from Ian Rappaport earlier on Twitter, it doesn't look like Jairus will be here. That's not a big surprise to any of us who follow the team. I'm hoping that the team is able to get this taken care of soon, but if they don't, I'm still confident that Jairus is going to sign before, it's too late, I guess, before the season begins. He's going to sign that tender, and hopefully they can work something out long term. If they don't, then we'll see what happens going forward, but I do like the chances of Jairus being a Bill for years to come.
Oh well, they got that additional money after the June 1st designation on the release of Fitzpatrick. So they'll have some, not to say that they didn't already have the cap space to sign him, but now they also have more just in case they were a little leery or worried about giving him the extra money that he's asking for. And with mandatory minicamp, I'm not sure what any team fines would be for the player. I know there would be leading player fines coming up for training camp if he were to miss training camp, but I'm not so sure about the mandatory minicamp because it's only, I believe it's 3 days.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, just to be frank with the listeners, I'm not 100% clear on how that works with a player who has been tendered a franchise deal but has not yet signed it. I don't know if they're able to penalize him or not. I've always wondered, actually, if all those things where you see, so-and-so was fined this, and goes on and on with some holdouts and stuff. I've always wondered if, once the new deal is done, they just forgive it and, move forward. I don't know if that's the case, and it probably varies situation to situation. But.
Well, yeah, and, it's interesting to look at, and, hopefully, like you said, the deal gets done, and he just stays a Bill for, the next few years, and we'll be good to go. But, mini camp coming up, there's going to be some great competitions, position battle-wise. There's, the roster spots are on the line, and everybody's going to be giving it their all. Quarterback, especially, everyone's going to be taking a quick look at that with EJ. The wide receiver position, linebacker position, you can go right down the roster, and everyone's going to be taking a look at it. So it'll definitely be an exciting few days. Bills fans will be clinching on these next few days because they won't have basically any Bills football talk unless something else breaks up until late July. So it'll be interesting to see that. Coming up on next week's show, we will be recapping minicamp. Hopefully we'll see some great highlights and maybe see some emergence coming out position-wise. Maybe the quarterback position, becomes a little clearer. I'm not sure how much clearer it would be leading into training camp. I think Marone wants to give everybody that reasonable doubt that, no one has the lead just yet. But
yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I really have enjoyed, what Chris Brown and others in the media have, different Chris Brown, not you, obviously, have put out there on Twitter and on their respective websites in terms of OTA observations. And if I could put a plug in for BillsMafia.com, Rob Quinn has been doing a great job in terms of position battles and everything that he's projecting out and digging into. So everybody be sure to check that out. But, yeah, we'll see what happens with OTAs and exactly what happens in terms of all these different position battles that are going on.
Thanks for tuning in to Bills Central Radio. For Bills news, updates, stats, highlights, and more, log on to ProFootballCentral.com.
Shout, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo, touchdown, rain, sleet, or snow, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo, defense, rain, sleet, or snow, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo, touchdown, rain, sleet, or snow, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo, defense, rain, sleet, or snow. Okay, new vibe, new feel, new coach, new Bills, red, white, blue steel, hard work, true skill. This year's on you, Spill. LDM, I'm predicting that. Touchdown, Stevie Johnson, swag cooking.